waste too much time with an introduction because you guys already know we are here on the You Are Limitless podcast with your host, Madam Chico, or just call me Chico. And I'm always grateful for you guys being here with me on another episode here on Y'all. And if you're new to the podcast, just know that I'm glad to have you here with me on my journey and having me a part of your journey, because there is nothing but unconditional love and unconditional support for you, for all, for me. And you are welcomed and loved unconditionally here. This is my way of bringing psychology, metaphysical concepts, universal law, as well as my own story of extreme limitations, being able to transmute that into something conducive to growth and really stepping into my own power and showing people how I've done it. That's what we're going to talk about today, is the idea of self-actualization, which in psychology, they call it's part of hierarchy of needs, I believe, or something like that. And at the very top is that self-actualization, that knowingness of our true power, our innate divinity, essentially. But we're going to go a little bit deeper from a more metaphysical or spiritual lens in the idea of self-actualizing, not doubting yourself, not ridiculing yourself, understanding why we do the things we do, why we have shown up in the way that we have, and how to transmute some of the 3D behaviors, the 3D thinking and habits. And we'll talk about what I mean when I say 3D, because we're shifting. This earth is shifting into a higher realm, a higher level of being, which would be considered 5D, right? And in order to shift that, we have to let go of the limitations and the beliefs that has kept us pinned up in some of the patterns and the lifestyles that we don't want, we don't prefer, and we know that we are capable of transmuting that. Maybe we don't know, because some of these self-doubts and limiting beliefs keep us stuck in fearing growth, fearing change, fearing the unknown, fearing success. And so that's what we're going to talk about too, is some of the symptoms of living in a negative egoic state. And if you are just not tuning in, last week or maybe a couple weeks ago, I released an episode on self-worth. It's a Q&A episode. It's a really great episode to go back to and feel into why there might be feelings of lacking in self-worth. But just like a quick recap, a lot of it is the conditionings of the mind, the subconscious programmings of our brain that is telling us that we're not worthy and that our worth is dependent on what we do, how we show up, the things that we like or dislike, social structures we're a part of, cultural upbringings, trauma. Unresolved trauma has a huge, huge impact on how we view ourselves, how we view the world, how we think the world is viewing us. And so it's a really good episode to go in, because we really want to start dislodging from the stories that we've been telling ourselves. And when we realize that we can transcend, we can evolve, we can be more of ourselves by letting go of the bullshit that was never us to begin with, that is when we start to self-actualize, which is much higher than this idea, in my opinion, of just self-actualizing in 3D reality. So let's pause for a little bit and talk about the 3D ego, the 3D attachments, and what that means. What do I mean when I say 3D? Okay, I'm talking about dimensions or density. Some people call it third density or fifth density. But it's just this higher, it's more than self-awareness. Self-awareness is like just the awareness of space, that the space that you're taking up, like understanding, knowing that you're here, and recognizing some of your behaviors and recognizing how you show up for people, and just having that awareness of like, I am here, this is the space I'm taking up, wonderful. But self-awareness doesn't automatically translate to behavioral change or translate to limitless potential. Okay, because you can still be aware and sitting in dog shit at the same time. And I know what that's like. We all know what that's like to be aware, and yet we're still doing things that we don't prefer, or we keep going in circles essentially, but we're aware of it. And so, to me, it's so much better to be aware of the dog shit that you're sitting in than to not be aware that like you're sitting in a dog shit and you're stinking up the place, right? And I don't know why I chose that particular analogy, but we're gonna run with it, right? It's all impromptu, and this is what I love about these episodes these days. Getting out of the way, that self-actualization, where it's like I know that whatever comes out is what needs to come out in the moment, and hopefully it resonates with you. If it doesn't, you will find something that does resonate. So, what is the difference between 3D and 5D? Well, 3D is the idea of the ego. And to me, there's no such thing as getting rid of the ego. That is your personality. And I think it's very naive, or it's misguiding to think that you let go of it. You become more aware of it though, right? And that's the goal, is to be able to have the ego working together with divinity, with your divine being, with your higher self, with the universe, with God, with creation. That is the goal, is to have it talk to each other, have it form a relationship. But when you're in the 3D negative ego, it's the idea of separation. You feel separate from everything. You feel separated from other people. There is you, and then there's the other. And whenever you see people as the other in a negative way, then you're passing judgments, then you're passing your own limiting perspectives onto other people, and vice versa. It creates this vibrational negative dance. Okay, it's not this beautiful orchestration of love and connection that you would feel in a 5D reality, where we are coming from a place of compassion and love for everybody, because you are me and I am you. That's what it means to be operating on a higher realm. So when you're in that 3D, you care about control. You want to feel validated by other people. And you do this through the idea of like your social status, maybe showing that you have more than other people, or even identifying so strongly with your physical body, and kind of predicating or creating your identity to be associated with the way you look. And it's unfortunate, it's sad whenever you do see people who, and especially if you are in an industry where you are capitalizing on your looks, it can be very detrimental if there's an egoic attachment to your looks rather than using it as a tool and knowing that you are not the body. This is just an avatar that we are. And so when you are operating at that 3D consciousness, right, it's based on competition. You're operating in your survival instincts of fear, operating with fear-based beliefs of, if I don't do this, then I won't be accepted. Or if I do this, then I'm going to get a bunch of likes on this post, or I'm going to get a bunch of people following me. And that is all part of that lower dimensional living, where we are living in judgment. We're living in comparison. We're negatively comparing ourselves to people with respect to what we do or don't have, or how we look, or our relationship status, or how our relationship we think it should be. We're placing all these conditions as well on materialistic things that really don't matter. That is the 3D consciousness, right? We're disconnected, right? And that's the main thing, is we're so disconnected that we're trying to fill the connection with things and validation from the external environment and ideologies too, because we can become very dependent on ideologies, our political status, all of these things, religion even, that are of the 3D reality. If we get so attached to it, there's attachment issues going on. That is the 3D consciousness as opposed to 5D, which is what we're going towards anyways, with that, the unity consciousness, that oneness, the divinity, understanding that everything is connected. And honestly, I think we all know this, okay? Because if you've noticed, and I've noticed this in the past, but if you notice yourself falling into the trap of judging someone, you're judging yourself. Okay, and that's like unity consciousness. You just don't realize it whenever you're operating in the realms of judgment. But that is what that is. What you do unto another is what you're doing unto yourself. And so when you elevate, when you evolve, when you start to raise your vibration, you know that what harm you do to yourself is what harm you're doing to another person every time, even if you don't see the direct correlation of the harm. Okay. When you're operating in that 5D, you are more heart centered. You are, and what I mean by heart center is you're motivated by the idea of love. You're motivated by the idea of wanting to evolve and wanting other people to also find what is truly in alignment of their highest good. You're operating from that point. You're not operating in survival mode most of the time. There could be moments of slipping back, but for the most part, you are operating from a place of knowing that you are good, knowing that you are abundant, knowing that you're worthy of manifesting anything and everything good because you are always, okay, let me repeat this. You're always, 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 my friends, you're always manifesting. We're always manifesting. It's about consciously manifesting the things that we want to manifest. So if you think that you cannot manifest money, for example, you're manifesting that idea of lack of abundance. And so you're manifesting all of the situations and vibrations and people who also represent that idea of lack of money. It could be with anything. If you think that you can't manifest a good relationship, a healthy relationship, a good man, a good woman, you might inadvertently attract somebody who would reflect that. Oh, well, see, I knew I wasn't worthy of a good man or a good woman. You also could, in turn, remain single or remain in a relationship that you know it's not serving you because it's what you know. And so we'll get back to that when we talk about the self-actualization, right? Well, we'll stay in that discomfort rather than moving into the unknown because, it's familiar. And familiarity, for some reason, we correlate to safe. But familiarity doesn't necessarily mean safety. So when you're operating from that 5D, you understand that you are the creator, you are the manifester, and you trust and you go with the flow. That does not mean that you don't take action, but you take action from a place that's not coming from lack, that's not coming from survival instincts, right? The oldest part of the brain, which is the reptilian brain, okay? We're coming from a place of knowing that we're safe, we're loved, we're okay, we can do this. We're not attached necessarily to the results. Sometimes that could be a little bit confusing in terms of, well, if I'm not attached to the results, then what does that mean? Like, does that mean to not have goals? It's like, no, that does not mean to not have goals or to not reach for something. But it's the idea of like, it does not have to come to fruition in any particular way because you trust the unfolding of your life. And I love talking about the difference between a 3D consciousness and a 5D consciousness because I for most of my life, and I think a lot of people go through that, right? And if you are in the spiritual space or the transformation space or just on your own healing journey and you start to evolve, you can see how deeply entrenched you were in 3D consciousness. I experienced this with my drug addiction or with shitty relationships or with feeling like I don't measure up or that I can't do this or I can't do that. Even as a kid, even like just feeling not good enough, feeling awkward, feeling like, why am I even here? And a lot of it spawned fear. We could even throw in jealousy. Jealousy is a 3D emotion where you're jealous because jealousy implies that you can't have what another person has, or you can't express yourself in the way that other people are expressing themselves, which of course spawns comparison. We have an episode, it's an earlier episode on comparison and judgment. And I don't remember which one it is. And I don't want to go back right now because I'm in the flow, but go back and listen to it because it is so powerful. All the episodes are really powerful. And I always recommend everybody go back to the very beginning and just listen to my story, listen to the idea of comparison and judgment and self-compassion, habits, and how our habits truly are very telltale signs of where we are at in terms of how we see ourselves, how we see our life, what we think we're capable of. So go back. Like, the episodes are great. I put a lot of my heart and soul into this. And there were moments in time where even on this journey, I was still operating in that 3D consciousness. I'm not saying that I don't fall back, and that's just part of the growth, because sometimes the growth, it feels very painful and we can feel ourselves reverting back to old paradigms and old patterns. But when we keep practicing, we keep rewiring our subconscious mind through repetition, which is the mother of all learning. It gets easier and you dive back less. Okay. Oh, that sounded good. You dive back less. That almost sounds like a rap. You dive back less. Hey, okay. So, anyways, but I've experienced this with even creating this podcast where I felt like, oh, I don't know how to articulate my message. Oh, I have to have a script. This won't resonate with people. I'm going to be judged. The people are going to judge me based on my past. I mean, all of those created a lot of stress within myself. But something that my teachers and shamans and gurus and my higher self has taught me on my journey, on my healing journey through the different modalities, whether it's through breath work, whether it's through plant medicine, whether it's through meditation retreats, whether it's through sitting in silence, through journaling, audio journals, whatever it is, I realized that leaning into what we fear the most is where the true alchemy and self-actualization comes into play. It's where it comes from. Because the more we lean into the fear rather than letting the fear condition us, condition our body, condition our thinking, the more we start to realize, holy shit, where's the fear coming from? What fear? What fear? We start to prove a different equation. We start to prove a different reality through the action that I was talking about, through the action that we take. And that is when we start to go into that 5D consciousness of intuition, our inner knowing, the divinity, peace, joy, love, all of the things that some people may see as delusional because look at all the trauma and hardship that's going on in the world. And that doesn't that doesn't take away from all of the hardship and the trauma and the sadness and the despair and the struggle and the hunger and the economic pollution and the injustices of this earth. It doesn't take away from that. But when you're operating from that higher level, you're able to give back in service to the people who are still looking for that guidance, still looking for the light within themselves. You're able to reflect that light by being an example to them, to show them that they are the light. I think that was like just a little bit of a side note or a side rant, but it's all important. It's all important to put in there. Let's go back to what creates the lack of self-actualization, because self-actualization and awareness is, it's just two different things, right? But when we are in that fear of change or growth because we are fearing the unknown, we're stepping out of what others expect of us, what we expected of ourselves, and we're stepping more into our truth, into our purpose. We're tearing down systemic barriers that we have created that exist out there, but we are also matching that vibration in order for it to have any type of effect on us. Operating from this place of fear or of the 3D reality. I mean, if you feel into your body, you can feel the blockages within your body, right? But within your energetic system or your body's energetic system, we call these chakras and our chakra systems, right? It could be our heart chakra, it could be our root chakra, the lower chakras, the higher chakras, but there are blockages that are in the body, that are lodged in the body, they're created through our experiences. They're created through the conditionings of the mind, through the subconscious programmings. And they're reinforced through our experiences and the stories that we're telling ourselves. This creates the lack of alignment within ourself and our higher self, within our soul and who we know ourselves to be. It creates that idea of separation. So we really want to let go of the over identification with the stories that we are telling ourselves, the stories of trauma, the stories of our mental ailments, essentially, because that is reinforcing the idea of not being able to come back into our truth and not being able to self-actualize, because who the hell are we? Who the hell are we to think that we are of divinity and that we are positive 100% of the time or most of the time and that we can accomplish it? Who are we is what the negative ego is saying. So when we live in that feeling of just that disconnection from source energy, from that divinity, from our higher consciousness, then we get the results that we see that we don't like in our lives. And I feel like my whole life is such a great example of limitations, of like growing up with abuse. And, you know, I try to not talk about the story so much, but also the story for me is necessary because I'm not identified with the story in terms of it having an emotional triggering response. And I used to, and this is when it was hard for me to talk about it. And through my healing journey, it has helped me dislodge from that story. But the story for me is so necessary to tell because, you know, some people are like, well, I've grown up this way, and so I don't know how I could be any other way. Like, look at all I've gone through and all the trauma. But that's why I tell my story, is because I feel like I was beaten into existence, and I laugh about it, but it because, you know, it's all part of my journey. But I feel like I was beaten into existence, and then the drugs beat me down, and then systems beat me down, and I felt very disconnected and like, who the hell am I to think that I was deserving of anything? So you might get some pushback from the ego when you start to question why it is living in these blockages. It is living in these fear-based conditionings of the mind, of the heart, of the body, of the soul. And this is what inner work is about, you know? It is our soul's mission, essentially, to remember divinity, to remember love, to not keep feeding into these stories of limitations. And that's why I created the podcast, the You Are Limitless, or y'all for short. One, I just thought that was amazing because it came to me in a download after I got back from Sedona last year. And I was thinking, or I wasn't thinking more so, but I was like, y'all, you are limitless. Y'all, I'm from Texas. Y'all. Yo. And even at the time, I was like, I'm not too sure this is gonna land. But when you're following your highest joy, you're in your passion, you're following your excitement, those type of thinkings fall to the wayside because it's more important for you to be of service to yourself and to others than it is to feed into the negativity, than it is to feed into mass consciousness of separation and materialism and lack of self-worth and the fear-based thinking that the majority of people live in. So I think it's just that self-actualization, right? Is knowing, you're stepping into that knowing. There is no doubt, most if not all of the time, that you deserve to be here because you exist, that you have a higher purpose, and that purpose, one, is to simply be. And then when you are being, you are working, you are operating from that point of being. You're not operating from scarce mentality. I also have an episode on getting out of scarcity mentality. A lot of this requires us to rewire our subconscious brain, to rewire our thinking, because it is truly the programmings that are lodged in our brain that is running the show. We have episodes on this as well. But it's running the show on repeat. And the process of rewiring our brain does not take all that long at all. Okay, so if you think about the unconscious process of the rewiring of your brain, meaning from, the time you were a kid up until the point where you're like, oh shit, my life is unfolding in ways I don't prefer, and I'm actually aware of this. All of that was done without awareness. And when you are rewiring your brain with awareness, with consciousness, it does not take all that long. You just have to really believe that you can, and then take actions from that point of belief, that believability, and habits. Okay. All of that is done through repetition. Okay. Thinking patterns, getting the brain, the right side brain and the left side brain, the creativity and the logical brain to talk to each other like a perfect orchestration. Like, think of you're at an opera and you have the conductor telling everyone when to play, how to play, what to play, that is your higher self conducting the show. But it's our ego that wants to play out of tune, that wants to, no, I'm going to play now. And then when you have somebody who's just willy-nilly operating on misalignment, essentially, is just the easiest way I could put it, then you get the frequency of misalignment. You get the vibration of low density, of low energy, of 3D consciousness. Beautiful how it all comes together. And knowing that you are the point of power, you create the experiences that you're experiencing through the conditionings, through the rewiring of your brain. Many ways to do this. And I feel like this is a very, I feel like I could break this episode up into multiple layers. So don't think that what I say here is all encompassing, because there are so many different ways to rewire our brain. But one, I want us to stop telling ourselves disempowering stories. For example, well, that's because my ex-boyfriend treated me like this. Therefore, I have a fear that all men are like this. That's a disempowering story. That excludes all potentials of alignment with someone who's more conducive to a positive relationship. That's just one example. When we stop telling ourselves these disempowering stories, we start stepping into what feels more aligned. And sometimes that can feel different. Okay. And so that goes to my next thing of embracing the unknown, embracing change. You don't make all these big moves, take these big leap of faith, but rather baby steps if you have to. Prove to yourself just a little bit. Let's say, for instance, you have a fear of speaking. Okay. Well, what you can do, and it's just a little thing that you can do, is maybe make it a habit to just talk to one person a day where the stakes are low. You may not see them again. Maybe it's while walking your dog or going on a walk or something. And you just say hi to someone and you ask them about their day. That's an easy way to start training yourself to say, it's okay. You can get out of your head. Not everybody's judging you. If anything, everybody's judging themselves. So think about that in terms of being able to train yourself to get out of your stories, get out of the conditionings. If you keep telling yourself you're an introvert, well, then guess what? While you could be an introvert, and that's great. I see myself as an extroverted introvert. I know when to turn on the introversion. I know when to turn on the extroversion. I think that we're all on a spectrum. But if we heavily identify with that identity, with the labels, okay? And this is all, we have to practice this. Anytime we find ourselves identifying with the label because it feels safe, we then create the idea of separation, and we aren't allowing ourselves to expand more of who we could encompass. Okay, so we detach from the stories, we detach from the labels, and these are really powerful ways to start to recognize through awareness how we can self-actualize ourselves through being aware of those conditions. Okay, and noticing anytime they come up, anytime we're telling ourselves a story of disempowerment, anytime we fall out of grace, anytime we fall out of love with ourselves, anytime we're not showing compassion towards ourselves and towards other people, we are starting to shift. We can recognize it because we're no longer getting so attached to that labels and the negative stories and the 3D realities of those stories that creates the loop, that creates the cyclic perpetuating identities that we don't prefer. And I hope all of that made sense. Also, another thing, be coachable. Be coachable. Even as a coach, I am coachable, okay? What I mean by that is don't be resistant to learning, to being a different way, to getting feedback from the universe, getting feedback from your peers. Like, be coachable, be teachable, because that is where the growth is. Sometimes our, and I love saying this, our triggers are our teachers. If we feel ourselves getting triggered, that means that there's a blockage within our body, within our chakras, within our minds. There's a blockage in there that needs releasing, that needs love, that needs acceptance. It's like showing love to parts of ourselves that we have compartmentalized, to parts of ourselves that we have shamed away and tried to stuff in Pandora's box. But then it keeps coming up in so many different ways. We have to validate ourselves. We have to show ourselves love and be coachable. Be open to learning from our environment. Be open to learning from our experiences, and to see how we are feeding into our negative experiences, because it's not always coming from out there. Some people would be like, well, look at what you made me do, but it's really, look at what I made me do to myself. And with my story, and I speak on this a lot, but with my story of feeling like the world was against me because here I am with this negative label of being an addict, like I was doing that to myself, but I thought everybody else was doing that to me. And I got that confirmation. So be open is my point, is be open to experiencing fully what it means to receive feedback that might feel hard, that might feel attacking even. But if you feel attacked, it's the triggers coming up. Feel into that. That could feel scary, but feel into that, because now you're taking the awareness and you're transmuting that. Do it on repeat, okay? And that's going to be my last point for now. We can dive into more of this later on. I'm not in any hurry. This is part of my excitement. This is what brings me joy, is to share this information with you and with anyone, whether it's in my coaching, whether it's at school, whether it's here on the podcast. It is just my joy to be able to bring all this information into the light, because this is truly what has helped me, is remembering, is knowing that I am worthy just by existing, and knowing that I am a part of this human experience, and that I can transcend these lower densities, and I'm not of the ego. I am not of the materialistic things around me. I am not what kind of phone I have, who I'm hanging out with. I am not that. Although we'll talk about who we're hanging out with and how that could have a negative effect on us in another episode. That's actually, I just thought about that. Because your environment could attribute to why you stay where you're at. And that's really important, because sometimes it can be hard for us to dislodge from our environment, from the people, because we've known them for so long. They're our friends, they're our homies, they're our family. We could stay in that even though they're not good for us. And I've experienced this in my own life, where here I am wanting to learn more about the juiciness of life and about the ego and about meditation. And some of my friends aren't on board with that. And I've had to distance myself from that, because sometimes we are a product of our environment. If we let it consume us, if we form our identity out of that, if we form attachments out of that, now I can see those same friends and wish them well and love on them without that attachment. But just know that we can be a product of our environment when we are unconscious to that. And how you know this is whenever you start to grow, whenever you start to evolve, when you start to step more into your truth, sometimes your friends might think that you're delusional. That'll tell you right there that maybe the table that you're at needs to shift. Maybe you need to sit at a bigger, grander table, a table that's more aligned with you, a table that has all the utensils, a table that has the people who are also wanting to grow with you. And I have found that in so many people. My group of friends, acquaintances, network has expanded tremendously. And with that, other things have expanded: financial abundance, love for the self, love for other people. People who are so different from me. We probably have nothing in common other than we exist, and maybe our oversouls are playing a game of cards or something, but for the most part, we are so different. And yet, whenever you're operating at higher vibratory levels, my goodness, it's just so easy to be able to see yourself in them. And that actually neutralizes a lot of the judgment and comparison aspects of living in that 3D reality, by the way, is being able to see yourself and other people. So let's keep it on. Let's keep going with the repetition. Let's keep going with training our brain. Now that we know that we are the captain of the ship, what we say goes. Our brain is working for us, not against us. Okay? Our subconscious mind wants to learn something new, wants to rewire. The universe is working and conspiring in our favor all the damn time, all the time. And it's only through our limiting beliefs and our fear-based actions and the idea of scarcity do we think otherwise. But even, and this is how unconditional the universe is, and we'll stop here. But even in lack of abundance, in scarcity mentality, in judgment, the universe will never contradict you. You are supported unconditionally. And this is how people can stay sitting in that dog shit and not be aware that they are sitting in the dog shit, because the universe will support you unconditionally. You are not to be contradicted. Okay, your vibratory energy is not to be contradicted. So what do you choose to vibrate at? You want to grow with us? You want to grow with me? You want to evolve into 5D consciousness? Take responsibility. Let go of the 3D thinking. We'll talk about judgment if the episode hasn't already come out, but we have an episode coming out on judgment. It's a powerful episode. Powerful. We also have another episode coming out in the future on our thoughts and transcending the ego and understanding it. So stick around. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to share my idea on self-actualizing, fully stepping into that knowing, no doubt in your beauty. Thank you for letting me share always my perspective, my ideas, the love that I have for you, for everyone. If you have any questions, you want to connect, you want to learn how to be more of yourself, you want to experience coaching, one-on-one coaching with me, please reach out. All of my links are in the show notes. Just know that I am always looking forward to getting to know you, where you're at, where you come from, where you're trying to go, and how we can get you there. So know that I am 100% always loving to be a part of any journey and having you a part of mine. Thank you guys so much. Like, I cannot begin to express how grateful I am for every single one of you listening, and how I just really want you to step into your power and to understand that you are divinity. You are an extension of source energy. You are limitless. And I am more than happy to help you see that. See y'all next time.